Hello, welcome to Cat's Love. Since we're in the holiday spirit, we're gonna be snacking and eating on some holiday foods. Christmas time is my favorite when it comes to stuff like this. Like, I love peppermint and I love ginger. But with me having a cat channel, I'm always wondering if my cat can eat the things that I'm eating. Especially when my kitty cat looks at me with that pretty little face, I just can't resist. So let's take a look at some popular holiday foods and snacks to see if they are healthy for cats or not. Starting with some Christmas foods, since that is right around the corner. I talked a lot about American Christmas staples and if they are safe for cats or not in the Thanksgiving foods short. So turkey, ham, everything like that will be featured in that short. But what about candy canes? Well, no, candy canes are not at all safe for cats. For one, especially around Christmas time, candy canes are mainly peppermint, which is toxic to cats. And also their stomachs shouldn't handle that much sugar. And if it's sugar-free, then it can contain xylitol, which is very poisonous to cats, and if your cat ends up consuming xylitol, then they should be taken to the vet immediately. Other than that, if the candy cane breaks, then it can produce some pretty sharp pieces that would just hurt, and the wrapper of the candy cane can cause blockages. Anyway, what about gingerbread? Well, that's a no. Ginger in itself shouldn't pose much of a toxicity risk to cats, but that doesn't mean at all that it should be a regular treat. Gingerbread in processed form usually features spices and nutmeg, which is not good for cats and it can harm them. Also, added sugars, and if you are decorating, then it will usually feature extra whipped cream and candy, so even more sugar, and that just in itself features a whole new list of stuff that they shouldn't be eating, which just wouldn't be a good Christmas present for your cat. Christmas foods in general are usually full of sugars and spices that wouldn't be good for your cat to eat, so once it comes to Christmas dinner, keep the human food away. And if you were to feed them anything off of your Christmas plate, then small portions of plain turkey, ham, carrots, and even cranberries would be okay, but in small portions. Now let's talk about our next holiday, Hanukkah. Let's talk about the main staples. So Hanukkah usually features a lot of fried food to symbolize the miracle of oil. But fried foods, of course, aren't safe for cats. So latkes, which is pretty much a potato pancake, won't be safe for cats. Same with sufganiyot, a jelly-filled donut, which donuts in general aren't safe for cats. Same with kugel. But the foods that would be safe for cats would just be plain, small portions of cooked brisket. Make sure it's not seasoned with garlic or onions. Also, just plain, unsweetened applesauce would technically be okay, but just remember, cats are obligate carnivores. Plain potatoes with no butter, no spices should be okay for cats. But just remember, once it comes to Hanukkah, anything with grapes, nuts like macadamia or almonds, as well as dairy products and gelt should be just avoided once it comes to cats. But let's take a look at our next holiday, Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa usually features a lot of African harvest traditions, eating foods like yams and plantains, along with okra and jambalaya. But what exactly is safe for cats? Starting with the main dishes, jambalaya obviously isn't safe for cats. It features toxic spices like onions and garlic. Same with gumbo, but just plain cooked shrimp and meat is okay for cats. Basically, just whatever it is, no matter what, just make sure it's plain and cooked with no seasonings or spices. Plain yams and sweet potatoes are okay for cats to eat. In fact, sweet potato is beneficial for cats, and some cat foods feature sweet potato in their foods. And plain cooked black-eyed peas will be okay, just as a small treat. Same with plantains, just cooked plain plantains should be fine for cats in small amounts, but shouldn't be given to them as a regular treat. But other than that, the usual jollof rice and cornbread isn't safe. So let's move on to our next holiday, Diwali. So Diwali usually features rich sweets, which said sweet foods are usually rich in spices and sweeteners, meaning they aren't necessarily safe for cats. So the only foods that would be considered non-toxic to our feline friends would just be plain cooked meat, plain cooked rice, plain cooked chicken, and plain cooked lentils can be fine for an occasional treat. But sweets like laddu and barfi aren't safe. Neither are any fried foods or halwa. But this next holiday, it's just meat. Independence Day is just basically everybody getting their grills out with the smell of gunpowder filling the air. And almost all the main staples for Independence Day are fine for cats as long as they aren't seasoned or have any bones. Just make sure it's fully cooked. Foods like hamburger, brats, chicken, anything you can throw on the grill that isn't just covered in seasonings or spices should be fine for cats. Obviously, stuff like s'mores and mac and cheese shouldn't be a treat for cats, but corn on the cob can be. Just make sure it's without butter. It can be a pretty good snack. But another good produce would be watermelon. Watermelon flesh in small amounts without the seeds would be a good treat if you want to include your cat in the cookout. Alright, let's talk about our next holiday. Cinco de Mayo. Now, tacos aside, I actually want to talk about some other popular dishes for this holiday. Tamales, for instance, are not safe for cats. I don't think you would make a whole tamale that's just plain meat with no seasonings or anything else in it. The corn husks can pose a choking hazard as well as blockages and a severe stomach ache. Plain chicken, beans like pinto, or just black beans, rice, and corn are okay for cats, but foods like guacamole are not. Plain avocado is safe in small amounts, but guacamole just isn't. And chips shouldn't be a regular treat. If one perhaps to fall on the floor and your cat gets a quick bite, then it should be okay. But since they are usually very high in salt and oils and fat, you shouldn't feed them it as a regular treat. Queso, salsa, and churros are also not safe. Queso isn't safe. Cats are mostly lactose intolerant, and even then, it's high in fat and stuff. Churros are high in sugar, and cinnamon isn't necessarily toxic for cats, but it can be toxic in large amounts. Salsa contains spices like onions, capsaicin, and all that, which doesn't result in good things. Plus, their mouth would be on fire. Also, alcohol is very toxic to cats, so margaritas and tequila, no, obviously. And finally, tacos are okay as long as it's just the plain cooked meat without any taco seasonings or spices like onions or garlic. And it wouldn't be a taco without a tortilla, except if you're making one for your cat, then you should probably leave the tortilla out. Tortillas are high in starch, which can make them difficult to digest, and high in salt. So when it comes to tacos, it's a no unless it's just the plain meat. But let's pass over to our next holiday, Passover. I'm so clever and funny. The foods that are considered safe in the list of foods and ingredients featured in symbolic Seder plates would be plain and or cooked brisket, potatoes, boiled eggs, celery, and apples. Of course, these are if they don't have any seasonings or anything like that, and if they are in small proportions. Foods like caroset can actually kill your cat as they usually feature grapes and nuts, which are not at all safe for your cat. Matzo ball soup and gefilte fish aren't safe, as they usually feature onions and garlic. Macaroons aren't safe due to their sugar content. Just remember, cats shouldn't fast, especially when it comes to the next holiday, Ramadan, focusing on nourishing meals. So foods like plain cooked lamb, eggs, and rice should be fine. Just make sure that whatever it is, like I said, is just unseasoned and properly cooked. Blueberries and banana can be fine in small portions. And really, this whole video can just be summed up to in 5 words. Keep it small and plain. Sorry if I missed on some holidays or foods. Just remember, if I missed a holiday or a food, remember those 5 words. Keep it small and plain. And you can add a couple more words in there, just make sure it's cooked. No seasonings, everything like that. Sorry if I got some pronunciations wrong. I'm not familiar with like half of these holidays. I didn't want to just feature American holidays. But thanks for watching. This present has been unwrapped. This has been Cat's Love. Bye-bye.